We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson, fresh off of our PFF 50 episodes. Go check those out, breaking down the best players in the NFL. What are we doing today, Sam?
we are doing, we're starting a franchise from scratch, right? Each of us. So we're going to have a sort of mini franchise draft. We're only going to go 5 guys deep. So essentially, who are the 5 players in the NFL that you would start a franchise with? And we're going to draft each of us. So it's not going to be the 5 that we agree on. We're each going to get 5. We're going to draft. We're going to flip a coin to see who gets Mahomes, essentially, because clearly that's who you're starting with.
We contemplated, do we eliminate Mahomes because he's such a slam dunk and he might just really be in his own tier, given he's in his own tier given his age.
Right, exactly. That's the complicating factor with starting a franchise from scratch, is that age, longevity, that is a real factor. So you have to start thinking about how many quarterbacks are even in the ballpark of Mahomes that are comparable age-wise. Maybe Deshaun Watson, although, there's other things there. Josh Allen, is he in that realm at the moment?
Trevor.
Probably not. Trevor. But the guys that would be actual rivals to him in terms of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, they're decades older, so they're not in the same category.
Tell me Tom Brady doesn't have 10 more years.
I've given up trying to figure out when the hell Brady's going to call it. 10 more years
of Brady.
Later in this show, we're going to talk to Andrew Whitworth, who's, Tom Brady of offensive linemen in terms of pushing it on in years. And he was saying that he didn't even discover essentially recovery as a concept until he was a decade into his NFL career.
Really?
So Tom Brady, if he's been doing this since Michigan, the avocado ice cream and all that kind of stuff, who knows how many years that guy can keep dragging it out for.
Yeah, recovery is so important. That's the whole thing, right? that is what leads to
right. And you have to assume if you've been doing that from the start, it probably has a better effect than it does if you take it up when you're 35, right?
And there's so many elements to it. There's nutrition, there's sleep patterns, there's just workouts and how you handle your body, all that stuff. I can relate.
Of course, you look like a paragon of recovery.
I haven't recovered in 10 years, but when I was
still recovering from your minor league baseball career.
Well rested. Any housekeeping? So we actually have an interview here. We're not going to tease an interview the entire show.
Yeah, that's actually happening. It's recorded. I've done it.
So unless we've lost...
You'll notice because I change outfits when the interview comes on. You're not even there.
Unless we've lost the video.
Yeah.
Unless we've lost it, it's going to happen.
Yes.
Can we confirm that we have the video? Producer Mike, you're a star of other shows. We got to get you involved here. Yeah. Star of 2 for 1.
All right, so we're gonna flip a coin to decide who gets to draft Mahomes. Ready?
None of us have an actual.
None of us have a coin because who the hell carries coins anymore?
Yeah.
But it turns out if you type coin flip into Google, there's a little virtual thing. So flip coin.
Hold on.
Here it is. Tails. Stop knocking the coffee over. You don't have to. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right, call it this time. Ready?
Heads.
Go.
Heads.
Heads. You win. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. But there you go. There's a little head thing.
Heads it is. I got the first pick here in the PFF NFL podcast fantasy draft.
We're going to have to figure out what we're calling this, but you have the
franchise
first pick.
builder draft.
So presumably you're drafting Mahomes.
I will take Patrick Mahomes, quarterback, Kansas City Chiefs.
That's good.
Now, do you get 2 picks?
Yeah. So that's the thing. That's what we decided, is that in order to give some attempt at offsetting the impact that Patrick Mahomes has, the advantage you have, the person picking second gets to take the next two, the first two players that aren't quarterbacks or your quarterback or whatever. So one of my starting players is going to be Jair Alexander. I'm going to start with corner. I think that's the next most valuable position.
You're going Jair first?
Well, here, what's the point in me taking a quarterback now? You've taken one. So unless you're going to take another quarterback, I think I can wait. Now, if you do,
now this is like the Indianapolis Colts. Remember the famous Bill Polian quote? Oh, we had a first round pick, first round grade
on Tom Brady.
Yeah. If the Colts actually had drafted Tom Brady, how many more championships do they win?
In addition to Peyton Manning?
Yes. So if they have Peyton Manning on the roster,
yeah.
Obviously, they would never do this.
They win none because they don't recognize Tom Brady's greatness because they have Peyton Manning. Brady goes and plays
that's not the point.
Seattle.
That's not the point.
And wins 8 Super Bowls there.
That's not the point. I said if they drafted Tom Brady,
yes,
obviously they would still keep playing Peyton Manning.
Right.
I'm just saying they wouldn't have to contend with New England, presumably.
Yeah, but you said
so
how many more Super Bowls would... Okay, so by virtue of the fact that the Patriots aren't good, you think the Colts would have won a bunch more Super Bowls?
Couple more.
Okay.
Yeah. If Tom Brady doesn't exist with the Patriots, the Indianapolis Colts win at least one more Super Bowl.
Brady just goes somewhere else and makes them into a championship contender.
I think you know me. I think Tom is the reason, right, for everything in New England and all that stuff. But it still would be a long shot. He's still a guy that went in the 6th round, and I think it's laughable when people are trying to, like, some people at PFF pulling Bill Belichick down just a little bit here. He made the most important decision in NFL history, which is to start Tom Brady, random 6th round quarterback, over Drew Bledsoe, the highest paid quarterback in the NFL at that time.
That's the issue. Is if Tom? I think you could say that if Tom Brady actually went pretty much anywhere else and got plugged in as a starter, he would make that team into a contender and maybe a dynasty all over again. The problem is, would he get that shot anywhere else as not just a 6th round pick, but in this scenario, a 6th round pick that's already been dumped from one team? Like,
I think
Colts
the environment
presume to get rid of him.
Too. Yeah.
Somebody else is picking up a random 6th rounder off the street to sit on the back of their roster. Like, how many teams is he like getting that shot? Is he getting an opportunity to do that again? Anyway, listen, this is why you said, no, why are we doing 5 players? This is why.
I knew we were doing 5 players.
Banging on about Tom Brady.
That's why.
During the course of discussing Jair Alexander as my first pick.
Because now I'm contemplating my strategy. But I don't want to give it away, so you go ahead.
All right, so I'm taking Jair Alexander. I think, look, quarterback, obviously the most important position. I'm going to get to that. I'm biding my time because you've already taken one. I think you can go in a number of different directions. And I think age is an issue because there are some players. Look, Aaron Donald is the best player in the NFL, regardless of position. Aaron Donald's 30 years old now. How many more years of Aaron Donald are you going to get before he starts to decline? I think it's probably a few, but you should have the majority of Jair Alexander's career left at a position that is arguably more important. And I think age just trumps that now.
No, I think that's a fair point. And you know, I brought up the discussion because I know it's only 5 players. And I have to contemplate, is it actually going to be worth it for me to draft a quarterback just so you don't have one?
I mean, it's not like there's only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL. I'll still get one.
But that's why I'm contemplating.
Yeah. So,
right, so
that being said, with my second pick, I'm taking Aaron Donald. I'm not leaving him.
Why did you do it in reverse order? Why wouldn't you just give Donald the credit?
I could. I just wanted to make the point that, look, age is a concern. And if you're thinking who's the very first non-Mahomes player you would take, non-quarterback player you would take, in terms of just pure play, it's Aaron Donald by a mile. If you have to factor in, I am starting a franchise, I need to factor in the next decade of play. Is it? Probably shouldn't be.
So here's what's crazy. So I took Mahomes, you take Jair Alexander and Aaron Donald.
Yep.
Here's what's crazy about the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the guy I'm thinking about right now is Tyreek Hill.
Right.
I'm thinking about the other Chief. And the other guy that's Travis Kelce, because of age and maybe, you know, just the nature of tight end as a position, as dominant as Travis Kelce is, number 3 on the PFF 50. I don't know. Kelce might not even get drafted in this particular game. He might. But that is what's crazy about the Chiefs, is you have the slam dunk number 1 quarterback. And I think Tyreek Hill from a wide receiver skill set standpoint is right up there. If you're just talking about who do you want going forward, it's him, AJ Brown, depending on how, like, DeAndre Hopkins and his age, like, who else is in that mix here right now?
Yeah, I mean, the wide receiver is an interesting position because a lot of those guys that are at the very top are getting on in years. Not, they're pushing the boundary where you have to wonder how many years you're going to get out of them in a theoretical franchise draft. So Tyreek Hill, I think, is 27 years old. Devontae Adams, I think, is 28. So
Devontae, yeah.
They're at that age. Like Devontae Adams at 28, he's right in the middle of his prime. He's just come off a career year. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. But 28, like, how many more years are you going to get out of that?
My concern with Tyreek Hill, though, is how is he going to age as a pure speed receiver? I'm going to draft him. I'm going to do it. I'm going for the
speed and quickness. And like, there's a lot to it. It's very difficult, I think, to predict how players that are physical freaks are going to age. I thought that Randy Moss would age really well given his skill set because he had great hands. His speed never really diminished. It was like a lot of the other things that did. And I thought at the very minimum, you would take a step off him, and because he's such a contested catch monster and able to go up over defensive backs, he would still turn into this amazing possession receiver late in his career, albeit like a sort of situational one or a specific role type. And Moss just fell off a cliff in terms of performance. Like, absolutely disastrous. And things that shouldn't disappear from him did. Like, he stopped being able to catch the ball. He started, drops became a massive problem for Randy Moss. Like, his hands completely disappeared. So I think it's very difficult sometimes to predict. Like, AJ Green is another one who, AJ Green never really had great separation skills and speed and all those kinds of things. And you'd think, well, in theory then, when he loses a step, it shouldn't make much of a difference. And AJ Green has hit a wall and isn't the same guy. So
I think the biggest point, though, is Green, Moss, they were still outside receiver. They're used to playing on the perimeter. And Larry Fitzgerald has always been a tough, over-the-middle, possession-plus type of receiver, right? In that Michael Thomas, Chris Carter type of mold, you would say, like, the guy that averages 13 yards per catch, not the guy that averages 15, right? I mean, there's a distinction there. So I think that's why Moss didn't necessarily, translate as much. It's not that he couldn't go over the middle. I mean, he did at times, but like, you have to live over the middle. You have to live in tight spaces, in contested situations, and live in that short and intermediate range, which Moss was like pretty good at, but not obviously it was never really his strength.
Yeah, well, there's
you have
also
to live there if you're going to age well. Is my point.
Well, yes, I think you can definitely say now that you can add years to a receiver's career if you can essentially move him to the slot late in his career. But they have to have that skill set, right? But being able to do that essentially allows you to extend the career of a receiver that's aging and maybe can't hang on the edge anymore. And I think for Tyreek Hill, that bodes well. Like, he's already spent a lot of time in the slot, a vertical slot game, so not quite the same thing. But the point is, when you move a guy to the slot, you give him a ton of free releases, you give him a lot of space to work with. And as long as he has the intelligence to understand defenses and where the space is and zone concepts and all those kinds of things, you can get him a ton of catches and a ton of yards simply by exploiting what the defense gives you in a way you can't necessarily do on the outside if he's lost the speed and the quickness that makes him so amazing.
You're listening to the PFF NFL podcast, Fantasy 5, picking our 5 franchise building players. And if you like fantasy football and if you like playing fantasy for money, you need to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's got everything, including season-long and playoff best ball. Best ball is a season-long game where you draft a team like you normally do, but that's it. There's no in-season roster management. Underdog automatically selects your best performers each week, saving you loads of time. Go to Underdog Fantasy and deposit $10 using promo code PFF and get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's promo code PFF. Draft now at Underdog Fantasy. All right, so I'm going to officially go Tyreek Hill. Despite some concerns about him aging, he is special because of his speed and quicks, as we've mentioned. So now I have Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. Back to you for just one, not 2 in a row.
I am going to double down on a
don't do
position.
It. Don't do it.
I'm going to snag Jalen Ramsey.
No, that's who I wanted. All right.
So look,
That was the risk I took because
Yes.
I really wanted Jalen Ramsey.
I'm going to be undermanned compared with you, right? You're going to have Patrick Mahomes throwing to Tyreek Hill. Jair Alexander's a great cornerback, was the best cornerback in the NFL last year, maybe the best cornerback in the NFL going forward for a period of years. But we know cornerback play is volatile. We know it swings. We know you might not be the best every given year. You need to get depth at cornerback. You need to add players that have the potential to be the best any given year. So now I've got two of them. Now I have arguably the two best cornerbacks in the NFL any given season, and I have Aaron Donald up front to generate some pressure.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I'm building a defense that can shut down the pass.
I'm aware of what you have here. I was debating between Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill here,
I still have zero offense, but I'm building a defense that can shut down the pass.
which kind of makes me want to go the other way and just go all offense here. And in my 5 versus your 5, bring it, when it comes to offense. And how are we filling out the rest of the roster? Is the rest of the roster
We're not. We're just going to get people
average?
to vote, I think. Who's got the best starting 5 to begin a franchise with?
All right, so I'm going A.J. Brown.
Ah, damn.
I'm getting wide receiver A.J. Brown. If you've got Jalen Ramsey and Jair Alexander, those are going to be some good matchups.
It really
though.
is. Yeah.
Jair and Tyreek, and then Jalen Ramsey versus A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going A.J. Brown.
It's actually interesting stylistic matchup as well, because you got like a power guy and a quick guy and a power guy and a quick guy.
Yeah, I mean, you have yak ability from both Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown. You have downfield ability. I mean, A.J.'s. Do you think it's fair to say he's the closest thing to Julio Jones as far as skill set? I mean,
Yes.
DK Metcalf has been. I think DK's got his own. I would still take A.J. Brown over DK Metcalf. I think he's a better rounded.
But whether or not you take him, they're very different in terms of Brown, I think, is a much more rounded skill set than DK Metcalf, who started off as like a one-trick pony and is still evolving into something more than that. I mean, I was writing yesterday, several days ago, by the time you listen to this, about Henry Ruggs and his first year with the Raiders and how, to start the year, he was like splitting targets and deep targets in particular with Nelson Aguilar. Like he actually had more of them over the first 5 weeks, I think. And then he got injured, missed a couple of games. And then there was like a little transition period. And then Aguilar got all of them from that point on. And Ruggs just disappeared from the offense. And it was a sort of case of like the Raiders failed him just as much as he failed the Raiders in that first year. He was still an amazing decoy. When you have 4.27 speed, you have this gravitational pull on defensive backs that you can't get away from. Like there's a ton of plays where somebody else is catching the ball because Henry Ruggs is running off like both the safety and the cornerback, in quarters or whatever it is. But the Raiders seemed extremely bad at look, he's not a well-rounded receiver right now, but you knew that when you were drafting him. Like this wasn't a surprise. You can't have looked at his Alabama tape and said, this is a complete wide receiver. He can do everything right now. You had to know that, all right, he's kind of a one-trick pony right now. Maybe 2 tricks, right? He can go deep, fast, and he can also win those contested catches deep, fast. But he's not, a tremendously nuanced route runner, all these kinds of things. So you need to do something to like help him out. Put him in positions to do the thing that he's really good at. Now, okay, if you say, well, Nelson Aguilar took that role, so now what do we do with him? Fine, the situation has changed. The plan you had has now gone out the window. But like, come up with plan B. Don't just say, well, now he's just a decoy. That's ridiculous. Like, there's precedent of Michael Thomas, DK Metcalf, guys who came into the NFL without a well-rounded skill set or without a complete skill set, and their team understood that, look, this guy's exceptionally talented. Let's figure out what he does well and only ask him to do that for the first year while he learns how to do the other things. So Michael Thomas, like 60% of his passes in year 1 came on slants, goes, and hitches. Like the basics.
Like DK Metcalf.
Right, the basics of the route tree. DK Metcalf, I think it was 50%. So you can get the ball in the hands of ridiculously good athletic receivers without, having to overcomplicate things and say, well, he can't run, this complicated route we want him yet, so he just isn't going to get the ball. Do you know how many times the Raiders threw Henry Ruggs the ball behind the line of scrimmage?
Probably half of his targets, if not more. None?
Nope, the other way. 0. Didn't
Oh,
throw
I thought
him
they had
single pass.
He was used as a decoy
Right.
on those completely.
Did
right?
not throw
That's
him
what
the
it was.
ball behind the line of scrimmage once. That's ridiculous. Like, come on. You have a guy that runs 4.27. Okay, what are the two things you do with a guy that runs 4.27? One, throw him deep. Two, just give him a smoke route and let him make something happen.
See my notes from early in the year.
And once they lost the first part, they just didn't do the second part.
I thought that they did early in the year. Because I remember the Jaguars stuff quite a bit. Remember when Matt Jones was first drafted? Matt Jones, the quarterback turned receiver who ran like a 4.3 at 6'6", 230.
Somehow, because it was like the slowest build-up 4.3 in history.
Yes, even though he looked slow. The Jaguars' first game with Matt Jones was back in 2005. It was like they unleashed the entire playbook in week one. Matt Jones in 2005 was taking direct snaps, zone read stuff. They were doing it all. And then like literally the next week, it was just like, okay, now he's just a receiver again. It felt like they had this great plan, but it was only week one. And it was, okay. My notes from early last year.
I thought you were about to tell me your notes from week one of the Jags, Matt Jones.
Not week one of 2005, week one of 2020. Was the Raiders doing a nice job of scheming
week one.
Ruggs.
Week one, it was great.
On a crossing route, on quarters looks. I mean, they were getting him isolated. They were using him on the ghost motion you're talking about as a decoy and all that stuff.
And honestly, it wasn't just week one. The first few weeks.
Here's the funny note, because my notes are on the Raiders themselves. I said, in caps, also, they were scheming up flat routes for Jason Witten on 3rd and 4. So they were doing a nice job of getting their speed isolated one-on-one in Ruggs. They were doing also a nice job of getting their 5.4 40 Jason Witten isolated too. So anyway, the point is, it just reminded me of the Matt Jones situation where you like have this player who's got a skill set that you want to tap into, and you kind of do it early and then you get away from it for whatever reason. It did feel like that a lot with the Raiders last year.
Yeah, I understand why they went away from him on the stuff that they were scheming up earlier in the year, because it's not even that Aguilar was much better at it. It's just that they found that connection, right? Carr and Aguilar started to work.
True.
And, Tyreek Hill was the only receiver in the NFL that had more deep touchdowns than Aguilar last season. So I understand that you just don't want to mess with that. So it's like, all right, Aguilar's getting those looks from now on. So, but the point is, at that stage, there has to be like a meeting or a discussion somewhere. Well, what does that mean for the guy we just spent the 12th overall pick on in a draft that most people would have thought that was kind of silly, right? You've got CeeDee Lamb, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got a bunch of other guys, and you chose Henry Ruggs. So if you're going to do that, you probably want to have a plan for him. And if your plan just went to hell...
It did. I mean, it's just year one. I think he's going to be much better this year.
Right, but my point
Ruggs
is,
will be better.
Smart teams would adjust, right? Smart teams wouldn't just say, well, Aguilar is now taking the plays that we're planning for Ruggs, so Ruggs now has no purpose in this offense. He's just going to run around all day doing nothing. That's bad management. That's bad game planning. It's bad, period. So I think my point generally was that, look, there are guys out there that aren't going to be well-rounded year one. You can still get the ball in their hands and have extremely productive and explosive plays from them.
I have some data because we've done some really advanced tracking on all routes and what coverage defenders are doing in relation to pass patterns and all that stuff. So we've got some, you mentioned gravitational force, right? They call this gravity in advanced NBA analytics, the players that draw more double teams. So NFL gravity or gravitational force or whatever you want to call it, attracting any kind of double team in our numbers, any sort of attraction of a second defender. Julio Jones, the most. This is over the last 2 years. Julian Edelman, second. And if you go back, remember Sunday Night Football when Chris was like, man, they're doubling Edelman every single time. This is when Brady was there in 2019. Don't forget, Edelman barely played last year. So this is mostly 2019
right.
data.
And that was when they had no other receivers.
They had nobody. So this wasn't an Edelman thing. This is we don't trust Nikhil. We don't care about Nikhil Harry or anyone else. Edelman's 2. Cortland Sutton's 3. Smaller sample size for both of those guys. Tyreek Hill's 4. Keenan Allen is 5. And I wonder how much of that. And CeeDee Lamb is 6th. I wonder how much for Allen or Lamb it's them just being in the slot. Therefore, you're in a more crowded space. So I think and Edelman too, honestly, you're in a more crowded space. So I think you really have to look at this. Outside receivers like Julio Jones, Cortland Sutton, also on the list right after CeeDee Lamb is Sammy Watkins and Terry McLaurin. So those are guys who more live outside, but Sammy Watkins people in the analytics community joke about him as like the decoy, right? That just the fun decoy for the Chiefs, like literally has been for the Chiefs outside attracting double teams. I just thought those were some interesting numbers there. How did we get on Henry Ruggs here in this best top 5
I
list?
don't remember. We were talking about wide receivers and how even with a limited skill set, you can still be productive, and somehow that became Henry Ruggs.
Let's reset here.
All right.
I have Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, 2 receivers, Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown. You've gone all defense, cornerbacks, Jair Alexander and Jalen Ramsey to go with Aaron Donald sandwiched in between with your second-round pick on the defensive interior.
Whose pick is it? Yours?
It's your pick now.
My pick.
Yeah, because you're always going to be a player ahead of me now.
Okay. So I want a wide receiver now, and I it's actually a very difficult decision because...
That's why I took A.J.
Yeah, so you've got, look, the best wide receiver in the NFL right now is Devontae Adams. But as I said, he's 28. So does that take him out of your consideration as the guy you start with because of his age? How many years are you going to get out of him? Like Julio Jones is 32 now, right? And people are questioning, is that the end, right? Is he on his way down? Is he done? So by that standard, you've got 4 years of Devontae Adams, which is decent. I mean, it's a rookie contract, right? But maybe no more than that. Alternatively, do you go down and look at the younger guys and say, well, these are guys we're going to get a decade out of, and that is much more valuable. So Justin Jefferson, right, by PFF's numbers, the second highest graded receiver last season as a rookie in an offense that doesn't really throw it around that much. So in theory, like Justin Jefferson's about to go into a whole offseason program, preseason for the first time, and second year in the league and knowing what he's doing at this point. The ceiling for Jefferson theoretically could be crazy high. DK Metcalf, as we talked about, right, still evolving, still becoming the player that he can be at the fullest of his potential, and is already a guy who can torch, Stephon Gilmore deep down the field for a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is another really interesting one. That guy was dominant year one, and we didn't really see enough of it because Dak went down, Andy Dalton came in, the passing game fell on its face at that point, and they went away from him. And he spent almost his entire time in the slot because you've got Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup already there. And then the last guy I think that belongs in that conversation is Terry McLaurin, who has been really, really good despite having zero quarterback play and zero help in Washington. Those, I think, are the options at receiver.
I think you might lose because we're going to have the listeners vote on this.
Yes.
You're going to lose listeners' votes if you look too far into the future. It's not going to play to their senses well enough. Yeah. So if you get a CeeDee Lamb, a Justin Jefferson, they're going to say, "What? That's not even. Those guys didn't even make your top 50," and it's because they're young. So I'm just helping you out here. If you want to win this competition. You got to know who's voting here.
Alternatively, you see that then you might have the best blend of that could be DK Metcalf because everyone already thinks he's an all-pro.
Yes.
Only going to get better. Mm-hmm. And he's young. So let's do that. Let's take DK Metcalf.
You're going to end up with DK and Russ, aren't you? Unless I take Russ.
Well, we'll see, won't we? We'll see.
We shall see. Do I block you with a quarterback? I wonder where our...
You can't draft a second quarterback.
I wonder where our team's stock would rank on Symbol. PFF has partnered with Symbol, the stock market for sports that allows you to trade sports teams like stocks and earn cash payouts when your teams win. Symbol has blended sports and the stock market to offer you a new way to invest in and profit off your favorite teams. Not necessarily Sam and Steve's teams yet. MLB's in full swing the rest of the summer. You can earn daily cash payouts. NFL free agency, still have a couple signings here and there. So you can invest in your favorite NFL team right now. See their stock rise. Use promo code PFF and deposit $10 at symbol.app/PFF to earn a free PFF annual subscription. That's promo code PFF with a $10 deposit at symbol.app/PFF to earn a free annual subscription.
Nice.
I'm just back.
Smooth. Did you make any money, by the way, now that your name, image, and likeness is available to be sold?
No, but a burden has been lifted.
Yes.
A burden has been lifted. I think I've told the story before, but back in 2002, I accepted an illegal gift.
Huh.
And I on July 1st, when the NIL deal went through, a burden was lifted.
Well, it's an amnesty for those that have committed sins in the past, unless you're Reggie Bush.
Yeah, My head coach bought me a bacon, egg, and cheese Dunkin' Donut sandwich on the way to the College World Series, bought it for me, paid for it out of pocket, and I know that's an NCAA violation.
It is.
And that was...
you could have lost your Spalding contract. That could have, the whole thing.
The whole thing could have crumbled. Whole thing. But maybe... I mean, we still are a top 5 participant in the 2002 College World Series.
Bacon, egg, and cheese McMuffin on the table when I dress up as minor league Steve?
Maybe you should. That was my college pregame meal. Yeah, college pregame.
All right, we just have one sitting here
And
for the whole time.
My head coach, lapse in judgment on his part and mine, to be honest.
Everybody's a failure at this.
That we allowed that to happen. And yeah, so I hope we don't have to forfeit any Division II College World Series victories.
It'll be a real shame.
From 2002.
Yeah.
But a burden was lifted, to be honest, yeah. So no, I haven't made any money on NIL.
No, neither have I. I mean, my image and likeness have been for sale for a long time, and
yeah, you're a professional.
Nobody's come calling.
I did want to declare for the NBA draft though after my high school. I just wanted to go through the process, just declare. You know what I mean?
How far do you think you could get just from being 6'10"?
Probably far, because there wasn't, I graduated in 2000.
Because everywhere we go, people assume you're a basketball player.
Yeah,
right?
and there wasn't like a lot of game film available. It's not like somebody could look me up and be like, what, this idiot? Averaging 10 points a game in like Division IV Massachusetts high school basketball?
I'm just curious,
but I could have declared.
How far through the process of like combines and stuff do you think you could get just from being 6'10"?
Oh, not that far.
No?
They would have seen me take like 3 steps.
Oh, yeah. That's not.
One hook shot. They probably would have looked at my scrawny arms.
This is like back in the early 2000s when the big men were still a thing, like big lumbering guys that can't really move were still coveted in the NBA.
6'10" people still know how to like dribble and shoot, things I don't do very well.
Well, they do, but there was still a bunch of like goofy, slow people that couldn't really play back then.
That's true.
You could have taken advantage of that wave.
Don't be like, okay, boomer, and be like, oh, Michael Jordan was playing against garbage men. I mean, they were
just
legit
saying,
athletes.
There was a period of the NBA when giant, goofy white guys that played center were a thing.
Yeah, but they were like...
There aren't many of those anymore. Like, you need to be able to play
They
now.
were 5 inches and 100 taller and 100 pounds heavier than me.
I'm not saying you wouldn't have been up against it. I'm just saying that people might have been willing to overlook the fact that you don't move tremendously well.
All I'm saying is I just wanted to declare for the NBA draft, just to like go through the paperwork, and say, look...
Paperwork.
I went undrafted, but hey, I declared.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to our draft here. Speaking of going undrafted.
Yeah.
Me, everywhere. You take DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
So you've got your first offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to get the fans. Should I actually block a QB? So let's think about the Chiefs and how crazy this is. Travis Kelce and George Kittle should be on my radar right now at tight end. I think I have to go defense though. I can't deny my defense any longer.
Who needs defense? It's 2021, Steve. You don't need defense.
So the next cornerback just on the PFF 50 is Marlon Humphrey. He's in that nice young age range. He's got some inside-outside versatility.
Yep.
I'm going Marlon Humphrey. I got to go corner.
I like that pick.
I'm going Marlon Humphrey. You could have grabbed Marlon Humphrey and had
just gone all secondary.
Yeah, had a nice slot receiver.
I'm going to create the greatest secondary of all time.
Let's go Marlon Humphrey.
And it's still going to get torched because you got Patrick Mahomes.
The other thing, too, he forced, 9 fumbles last year? I need a guy that's going to turn the ball over, get the ball back to my offense.
The peanut punch.
To Mahomes and Tyreek.
Mastered it.
Yeah. So I got Marlon Humphrey, my first.
Humphrey, I think, in particular, is a really good corner to take in this kind of scenario because of that versatility. Because you could say, I think in theory, you could give him a Jalen Ramsey role and he would hold up really well. He'd be one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL at it. Alternatively, he moves around everywhere. So if you end up in a situation where Humphrey now needs to cover the slot because you didn't find a slot corner later on, he can do that. He's one of those secondary linchpins that lets everything else function. If you have that guy, you don't have to start focusing so hard on specific skill sets because he lets you play with anybody else. So yeah, I'm actually annoyed. That's a good pick.
Thank you.
I don't like that.
I think the fans are going to like my team. I think our listeners are going to lean Team Steve here.
Right. So now I need a quarterback, right?
It depends. Do we want to expand this out?
No, we don't have
5 players. That's it.
So I need a quarterback now. And age has to be a thing, right? So Brady's off the look. I'm not buying into however many freaking years Brady can play, even though it's probably another 8. Rodgers, similar kind of thing. Who the hell knows how long he can last, but I don't think you can take the risk in a draft from scratch. Russell Wilson is younger, but like not in a dissimilar boat. Like how old is Russell now? He's into his 30s, right?
Yeah.
32. So Russell Wilson is probably as young as it gets in terms of, all right, I can probably expect a decent number of years out of this guy. On the other hand, Russell Wilson is a quarterback who was traded off mobility and a very unusual skill set in terms of how he plays the game. So if you're projecting not just how many years does this guy have left, but what happens when he isn't the athlete that he used to be. So what happens if Russell Wilson loses a step and the ability to scramble around for days behind the line of scrimmage? Does he become Ben Roethlisberger, where it's like, all right, like the things that made this guy really special aren't actually there anymore, and now you just have something entirely different.
But by the way, a couple things about our teams at the moment, because if you were going to consider Russ, that would complete you being all NFC.
Okay.
I'm all AFC. The other thing is if you did add Russ, him and DK, teammates, right? Yep. Just like Mahomes and Tyreek, I think it just speaks to, and then Donald and Ramsey being teammates. Yep. I think the fact that we're starting a franchise with 10 players here and a couple of them are teammates is pretty fascinating. The fact that you get to see Donald and Ramsey play in the same defense and Mahomes and Tyreek play and maybe Russ and DK.
Yeah, so I think there's a strong case for Russ. I think he's the first of the quote unquote older quarterbacks for whom there is a genuinely strong case. I think you should expect the majority of a decade of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But there are guys that are much younger and I think in a similar category of where they play. I think there's a strong case for Lamar Jackson. Lamar is the unique case, right? Because he's the unicorn in terms of athlete, in terms of just freakish offensive weapon. We've seen in Baltimore the impact that he can have. The entire thing is built around him. Like the offense hinges on the fact that Lamar Jackson is this freak, unique weapon that nobody else has and you can't defend. And he makes the run game better. He makes his own life easier as a passer, albeit still his limitations as a passer are still, I think, capping how good that offense can be, even if he's making his own life easier with the run threat. So Lamar, I think you can take and say, all right, we're doing what the Ravens did. We're going to build an entire offense around this guy. We have arguably the best athlete in the entire NFL, and it's not going to look like your offense. It's going to be different, but this is our thing. The dude was a unanimous MVP. I think his resume is extremely strong for this. The other candidates, I think you have to consider Josh Allen. Josh Allen was phenomenal last year. PFF grade above 90, looked like an MVP caliber quarterback. Okay, the Bills have done a really good job building around him, but this is a guy who is young, who, I think Greg Cosell, friend of the show, said that he's the most talented, most physically talented quarterback that's ever come into the NFL, that's ever been in the NFL. And when you think about it,
more than Elway.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's a bigger, stronger guy than Elway was. And he's at least comparable in terms of arm strength and athleticism moving around, right? Like Elway had some, Elway back in the day had some wiggle to him and some escapability and all those kinds of things, but he wasn't built like a tank like Josh Allen was.
Yeah, it's just like relative to your time though. Like Elway was playing at a time. William the Refrigerator Perry at 310 pounds or whatever was like, oh, this dude's huge.
310?
He was like 310 when he first.
The Fridge was a monster.
But there was only like one 300-pound player on each team.
Dude, I think you're misremembering the 1980s.
So he might have been like 350 or whatever, but he was the only guy. He was the only guy that was 300 pounds.
No, the 80s were stocked full of monster people. You're thinking of like the 70s.
The 90s were. The 90s were. That's when like Gilbert Brown and the Fridge weren't that much different.
The Fridge was listed at 335 at 6'2". The Fridge was huge.
Okay, well, how many? There was a point where there was in 1985 there was 10 300-pound players per team, and then 10 years later there was 30 players per team or whatever. No, that's the wrong number. There was a handful of 300-pound players on the 85 Bears, if any. Go check it out. Steve McMichael's playing at like 280, defensive tackle. The
70s had very small players. The 80s, they were starting to get into like jacked up stage of monsters.
Elway in the 80s was proportional to like Josh Allen now. You're talking like Elway is defensive end size in the 80s, running around with a cannon for an arm. So they're probably similar.
Maybe.
It doesn't
Okay.
really
Elway
matter.
would
I mean,
be
they're
one of the
similarly
other,
talented players.
Elway would be one of the other people in the conversation. You can make the argument that Michael Vick is in that category as well because of his freakish speed and athleticism, and he had a cannon for an arm. He wasn't the most accurate quarterback in the world, but
it depends on because accuracy is talent. So it depends on how you define
right.
talent.
And it's also it's a physical trait as well, like being able to being able to harness your technique and skills to put the ball where it needs to go. It's a physical trait. It's not a mental
So you
thing.
could argue Peyton Manning.
I mean, that's taking it a step far. That's taking it a step further than I'm willing to go.
So the whole idea of quarterback talent. Like if somebody said who's more talented, Tom
but
Brady
this
or
isn't.
Cam Newton.
His point was very specifically physical talent. So look,
I think accuracy is a physical talent.
I think it is as well, but I don't think like processing is.
Agreed.
So
That's quarterbacking.
right. But the point is, Josh Allen was one of the. I think he was 6th in terms of adjusted completion rate last year. He became one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the NFL.
Sure. So I get your point here.
Peyton Manning maybe slightly more accurate than last year's version of Josh Allen, but he isn't in the same realm of like athlete.
True.
So he's probably not in that conversation. Elway is, Michael Vick is, Randall Cunningham maybe, like whatever way you slice it, Josh Allen is definitely in the top 5 of most physically gifted quarterbacks to ever play the game. So
Sammy Baugh.
Slaying Sammy.
I mean, my quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is up there.
Yeah, probably.
Aaron Rodgers is up there. Let's not get too crazy.
But like the point is you can definitely make that argument that Josh Allen is the most physically gifted quarterback in the NFL ever and is coming off a season with a PFF grade above 90.
True.
So he has to be in your consideration in terms of a guy you would start a franchise with from scratch. If you want to go even younger, can you make a case for a guy like Kyler Murray? Do you still believe enough in what his potential is, having seen a couple of years of him play?
I think I would still project Trevor Lawrence ahead of him.
I would be scared of it at this point. Justin Herbert, based off his rookie year, again, I'd be pretty scared of that based off just not enough evidence. And Trevor Lawrence, 0 evidence outside of college tape. So that would be a total gamble. Like, sure, an educated one based off what you know of him as a prospect, but terrifying compared with other people. So I think really...
We talk about Josh Allen a lot here. Do you have any... last year at this time, I was using the 3 years that we had of Baker Mayfield's college data as part of my discussion for Baker Mayfield. We had 3 years of college data, excellent. We had a rookie season, which was excellent. We had a sophomore year, which was poor, but like all around league, like average to below average around the league.
The story with Baker Mayfield last year was we had 5 years of data on him and 4 of them were good.
Yes. Do you have any concerns with Josh Allen now? It's college data is involved too here.
Yes.
He was not bad in college. He was really good his second to last year at Wyoming. He had an 84, 85 grade. He was very good and the crazy tools. He was not good his final year at Wyoming. And he was below average his first 2 years in the NFL. So when you look at the entire body of work of Josh Allen, there's 2 good years out of 5. Mm-hmm. And that's what we always say about Nelson Aguilar, right? That's how we describe Nelson Aguilar.
The difference, I think, is that so it's very difficult dealing with like separating narratives from fact and all those kinds of things. With guys like Daniel Jones and with Josh Allen, if you're a believer, if you're a guy that buys into what they are, what they can be, you can always find excuses or reasons or things that you have determined are actually the driving force behind whatever difference there is between like his performance and, like a Trevor Lawrence's performance or a Justin Fields or a Baker Mayfield or whoever. I think when a guy like that pans out or when he really shows, like when he becomes the sort of potential, the ceiling that people thought he had, believers, it becomes easier to buy into those things, those excuses as legitimate reasons. So Josh Allen, obviously playing in Wyoming, there was a supporting cast issue, right? It's like this guy was a big fish in a small pond, playing admittedly against, bad defenses as well. But you're like, who was his help? Where was his help? What was the offense around him? And if you're a guy that believed in him as a prospect, that's the argument you're making at the time. When you see him with improved supporting cast, then develop and flourish and become this monster of a quarterback, I think it's easier to buy into that as a reason, like with hindsight. Right. It doesn't mean that you're presented with the same thing again. you make a different decision. But I think with hindsight, it does change your opinion on whether that was true or not.
I agree those things matter as well. I do.
Sure.
Those are a factor. We've seen the same thing with Patrick Mahomes or Dak Prescott or whatever, where they've gotten better as they were put into better situations in the NFL.
Right. And I'm not saying that, look, if you went and did it over again, if you had the Josh Allen, if you reverse time and Josh Allen was a prospect right now and all you had was his college data again, I'm not saying you would make a different declaration necessarily and saying, oh, it's definitely his lack of supporting cast. That's the reason he wasn't phenomenal in college. But I'm saying, like, now, knowing what we know now, I think it's an easier case to make to not dismiss those seasons, but to sort of modify them in your thinking, right? So instead of looking at the data and saying, well, those are not great years, should that take off what we think of him now? I think you can say, yeah, but we know the supporting cast was an issue now, so let's boost those years and let's have them a slightly more important or sort of slightly better performances given that understanding.
Let's make another case. Let me make another case here. Let me make a pro Josh Allen case here, right? We talk a lot.
That doesn't happen often.
I know. We talk a lot at PFF about when we make these decisions.
Somebody, by the way, somebody suggested in our, email in for what things we could do for charity, that if we raise enough money, you sign the Josh Allen apology form.
I think that's a good one.
It's not a bad one. Yeah. So a lot of people have pointed out the fairly self-evident, obvious, that the first one we did was for supporting a men's charity. The second one was for the kids. So the next one has to be for women.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
And I have a similar group that we can
And then
support.
The one after that should be pets, animals. You're obviously not an animal guy, but
I have no comment.
I now have a dog, so I can jump on the animal-loving bandwagon. And here's the thing, right? COVID happened, lockdown, everyone was stuck in their house for a year and a half. Everyone and their mother bought a dog, right? I know this for a fact. I have a dog that I didn't have a year ago.
COVID dog.
Right. Everyone has a COVID dog, but now everyone's back at work. A bunch of these things are now winding up in like animal shelters and, getting destroyed and stuff. So the infrastructure around pets has not caught up to the fact that everybody now has a pet. So I think actually like an animal rescue shelter is a good charity to do after our women's charity, which will be after the one of me dressing up like Minor League Steve.
Fair. I also think Bill's Mafia, they love giving to charity, so we could get them involved if we can help.
That'll be the biggest charity drive ever if we get that going.
I'm willing to do that for the kids or the women or the pets or whoever. Here's the point I was going to make, right? We talk a lot about PFF, about in this vacuum where we're not in the chair, right? We're not in the seat for any of these 32 teams. We're doing it from the outside looking in. And I know that the forecast guys especially think about maximizing EV, expected value, like maximizing the ceiling, so to speak. Should we be looking more at that? Like, should the Josh Allen decision, this idea that we used to poo-poo, chasing the ceiling, chasing the upside of the quarterback, should we not have done that? Should we view it through that lens that if you hit on an average toolsed quarterback, he actually does have to be like Drew Brees or like Tom Brady with his mind and with these other things that are difficult. So this is the Mac Jones discussion as well, right? Like, should we say, don't go after the Mac Jones because that perceived ceiling is lower and that the right move is Josh Allen? And it's like, okay, if you miss, you might miss hard, but it doesn't matter. Like, a miss is a miss. Missing on Josh Allen or Dwayne Haskins, same outcome. Missing on Cody Kessler, if you drafted him in the first, is the same outcome as missing on Deshaun Kaiser, who had better tools, right? But the payout of Josh Allen is higher. So I think
I still don't buy into that as a concept, that the payout for a more athletically gifted quarterback is higher than the payout for another quarterback, like for the Mac Jones, right? I think ultimately, because the best quarterback, like Tom Brady is still arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, and the dude is a statue. Like, he's maybe slightly more athletic than he was 20 years ago because he was the least athletic quarterback in the world. Tom Brady, like the fact that Tom Brady can't scramble around and make crazy plays or add in the run game, it's irrelevant. It doesn't impact how good he can be as a quarterback. You can still be the greatest quarterback in the NFL without being able to move.
All of that agreed.
So the ceiling isn't
But let's
higher.
call Brady, Breeze, and Peyton the outliers at this point. The next tier of guys that have been like that have been like Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan, right? And
Which
those
is
guys
still like almost as good as it gets.
And those guys have been excellent. Those guys have been fantastic. But now this is the whole Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford decision. This is all of those decisions where you're chasing the ceiling and the upside. And has Josh Allen made us forget all of the Blaine Gabberts and the Jake Walkers of the world?
I think
now?
This is just cyclical. Like now, the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL are Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen. It's a bunch of guys that can move around. So now we're like, well, you need a guy that can run around. That's what all the best quarterbacks in the NFL are. Now this is what we're chasing. But you go back like 10, 15 years, all the best quarterbacks were statues that couldn't move. And then you go back 10 years before, like it just cycles.
It's not just the movement though. It's the velocity of it. So when I talk Josh Allen, it's a velocity driven thing too.
Right. But I just don't think that this is a permanent change in the position at the NFL level. I think we're just being driven by the recent success of a bunch of guys that fit that mold. Like you go back, God knows how many years it is at this point, but to the early period of Joe Montana's career, right? He was being hailed as this new wave of athletic quarterbacks because he could scramble a little bit. Like by today's standards, Joe Montana would be one of the least athletic quarterbacks in the NFL with a comparative noodle for an arm, right? And he was like, at the time, he was being hailed as this like incredible new wave of athleticism and, physically gifted. Like it's ridiculous. And then even just a couple of years later, Steve Young comes along. I was like, well, this is different. Like the dude is an active running back by comparison.
But the arm talent guys
just swings.
John Elway, arm talent guy who took some years to get it going. Brett Favre, arm talent guy who took a couple years to get it going, then became MVP. Is Josh Allen there? Is it cyclical? I don't know. I'm talking in circles here, but is it cyclical where you just get one of those guys every now and again? Was the NFL wrong for chasing the arm talent guys for years?
So here's what I think it does, though. Where I think you're wrong is that I don't think the ceiling is higher for those guys, right? So I don't think the idea is you chase the toolsy guy, the big arm freak, because if you hit on him, he's going to be better than the dude that hasn't got those tools. I think the ceiling and how good those guys can be is completely independent of that. Like Mac Jones, Tom Brady, those guys, the ceiling is the same. They can still be the greatest quarterback in the NFL if they're good enough at the other things. Where chasing the big arm tools guy makes sense is that I think the floor might be higher, and it's easier for that guy to be viable than it is for the dude that doesn't have any of the tools.
I raise you Blaine Gabbert.
I'm not saying it's.
I raise you Jake Locker.
It's not that it's. You can still miss, right? It's not like it guarantees you're going to hit. I just think it's easier for those guys to mitigate problems, right? So the issue I have with a Mac Jones is that if you are slightly wrong on your evaluation, so you look at his tape. You look through Mac Jones' tape and you love pretty much everything you see. You're like, the ability of this guy to work through a progression, to find the open guy, to read a defense, to put the ball right on him. It's beautiful. It's the best of any quarterback in this draft class, including Trevor Lawrence. If you get that wrong a little bit, right? If you were misled by the offense, if you were misled by the fact that he was throwing to these incredible receivers, if you screwed it up just a little bit, now you've got real problems because he doesn't have anything else. So if that was your one thing you were hanging this off and you screwed that up, now you just have a quarterback that isn't any good, or at least isn't very good. But if that was the case for a guy like Josh Allen and you messed it up and you misread what he was really good at, you still have some offset to the fact that he can hurdle Anthony Barr in the open field and score a 50-yard touchdown and fire the ball 70 yards downfield to a wide receiver in the middle of like a disastrous play. He's got things to his arsenal that can offset the fact that you misread slightly how good he was at the thing that's supposed to be the calling card for a quarterback.
Fair points. I agree with your point too. I guess the ceiling, I mean, everybody acknowledges Brady as the best of all time, and if you're ranking best of all time, you'd have Brady and Montana.
Right.
Well, a lot of people have Brady and Montana 1 and 2.
Unitas.
Yeah.
Go back far enough. Another guy that doesn't really move. Peyton
Marino's
Manning.
the other arm talent guy that got better. Like once he got to the NFL and became pretty special. So anyway, are you going Josh Allen? All that said,
I think those are all the candidates, and I think I'm going Josh Allen. Now I'm really hoping that he doesn't regress hard next year.
So I shouldn't have taken a good job not taking Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you did, and just now you have a quarterback controversy, and I'm sitting here with Josh Allen. Wasn't going to take Russ anyway.
Okay, so now I have Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. I've got 2 receivers. I've got Marlon Humphrey at corner. I can go. So this is where I think the best player available strategy, just like I preach in draft
good
time.
players.
Best player available at positions of value is the way to go.
Okay.
And now I'm thinking about those two value positions of receiver and corner. I don't know. Like the next cornerback on the PFF 50 is Bryce Callahan. Yeah, great. Good job, Bryce Callahan. I'm not taking Bryce Callahan in a top 5 draft here. As productive as he has been. There are other options here.
He's also kind of old, 29 at this point.
Yeah. So I don't think there's another clear-cut next great young corner that I need to take. But at receiver, again, coming back to receiver, tight end, I think destroying this hypothetical league with offense is very intriguing.
Okay.
Very intriguing. So I think Davante Adams is on the board for me here. Travis Kelce could be considered, and George Kittle could be considered. I think there's less certainty with the tight end position. I think you get hurt more at tight end. They're both, Kelce's getting a touch older, and Kittle has been banged up.
I don't mean to sway your decision, but TJ Hawkinson won the heavyweight championship at Tight End University that was just being held. So,
oh, really?
You might want to consider that.
Hawkinson might be the guy. I think that might hurt my votes.
Heavyweight champion. You got a belt and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
We need the PFF belt here. We have to get it back here on the show.
Where is it? It's upstairs, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we're not going to pass that around or anything, we should just use it for the show here.
We could have you have the
old WWF title too, right?
Yeah. We could build a little mount system on the front of this table and just have it hanging there the whole time. So in this shot, the belt is just like across the front of this table the whole way.
Whoever wins the vote here gets to hold the belt. Any belt.
All right.
Well, for the next show.
Cool.
So we could have, we have bad stuff we have to do, but we deserve rewards as well. We deserve rewards, not just afros and minor league Steves. I'm going Davante Adams.
Okay.
Again, I'm building the Chiefs, apparently. But if I'm building the Chiefs...
You're building better than the Chiefs.
Well, that's what I mean. If I'm building the Chiefs and they're spending all this time reshaping their offensive line and just getting a little bit better, with Orlando Brown instead of Ali Villanueva, that what's going to put them over the top is that third receiver, that third playmaker, and I'm not going to let that happen when I have Mahomes. So I'm going Davante Adams.
You're going to have some real chemistry problems in terms of how are you sharing around that many targets? There's going to be some upset receivers. Receivers are divas, and you don't have as many targets to throw around to those guys.
Not because the average team runs the ball about 20 times, right? Well, those runs become passes.
Okay.
So
how many times are you going to run the ball?
Like 1 or 2. And it's probably Tyreek. That's one of his touches.
4th and 1, Tyreek Hill, just a direct snap.
Bunch of sneaks to Mahomes. That's why I probably should have drafted Russell Wilson, because Mahomes gets hurt on sneaks.
It's true. You need a sneak quarterback.
Taysom.
The later rounds we get Taysom in for the sneaks.
I would get Brady for 2 years of just QB sneak expertise. Honestly, I really think every quarterback should be good at QB sneaks. I thought that left-handed pitchers, there's no excuse to not be good at those things. It just takes a little work and attention to detail.
It isn't the most difficult skill set in the world. It's nothing to do with power and size. It's to do with taking a beat and seeing where the crease is and just diving into it. It isn't that hard.
Yeah.
And if you're Mahomes, not getting your leg mangled at the same time, that's part of it.
That was freaky. So yeah, I think that I like my team. So let's recap.
Yeah.
I've got Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Marlon Humphrey, Davante Adams.
Yeah.
QB, 3 receivers and a corner. So your team.
Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, DK Metcalf, and Josh Allen.
So here's what I think we should do.
So here's what I have the most physically talented quarterback of all time.
Stop. Hold on. This is my idea. We each get 30 seconds to cut a promo.
Okay.
WWE style promo.
Right.
Selling your team.
Okay.
To the fans.
I can't know. All right, go on then.
You don't have to turn into Hulk Hogan or
good,
anything.
because that's
Maybe
not
I
going
will.
to happen. We'll go on.
I could do it as Peter King.
Hit it.
I could do it.
Peter King cannot cut a WWE style promo. That would not work.
Well, sometimes less is more. Sometimes you whisper into the mic.
Yeah.
And you make.
I mean,
point.
I just think stylistically, length. No part of Peter King's game.
Peter King's not good for
can
WWE.
translate to a WWF style promo.
But you should. Where are we going to put this for voting? Is it going to be on Twitter?
Twitter.
Okay, so we'll do a Twitter vote.
Yeah, we'll get someone to create a graphic for us.
We'll put it in the YouTube comments or in the YouTube notes.
Sure.
As well.
You can do a poll with a picture, right, in Twitter? Can you? Otherwise, you might have to list it out.
Get our advanced social team on this.
Right.
Do you want to go first?
No, you go first.
It doesn't have to be WWE style. I'm not a good actor. But all right, my team. It starts with the best quarterback in the NFL. It's Patrick Mahomes throwing to a perfect target in Tyreek Hill, the best deep threat in the NFL, maybe in history, Sam. And then A.J. Brown, one of the other best deep threats in the NFL. Devontae Adams is my possession receiver. 3 receivers who are uncoverable, and one of the best young corners in the NFL in Marlon Humphrey. We're going to win with offense, Sam. We're going to creep back toward average on the offensive line because we have 0, but we just need to be average there. And as long as we become average on the offensive line, my defense doesn't even matter. It's all about the offense, passing the ball, and winning through the air.
Okay. All right.
Your turn. 25 seconds. Go.
Physical freaks have never been more important than they are in today's NFL. I have the most physically gifted quarterback to ever play the game. DK Metcalf is one of the most physically intimidating receivers to ever play the game. Jalen Ramsey is one of the most physically intimidating defensive backs to ever play the game. Oh, by the way, Aaron Donald, the dude trains with knives. He's one of the most athletic and gifted defensive interior players, as well as arguably the greatest defender of all time. And then as an extra guy, I've got Jair Alexander.
Then I've got the short 5'10" guy who's just really good at covering.
Uh-huh.
That was good. I'm just going to say, since my team's better, you really needed to get over the top with a good promo. So
I'm just saying, almost every single member of my team can kick the guys' asses on your team. I have more physically intimidating players than you.
I have A.J. Brown.
Yeah, all right, you got one. A.J. Brown, remember, in the photo was like the small guy next to DK Metcalf when they were like ripped and shredded and showing their muscles.
Fair.
It's like, hey, look at DK Metcalf and that other guy next to him.
You do have some physical freaks on your team.
So I'll match up like DK can go up against A.J. Brown, kick his ass, and then the other 4 guys just annihilate your 4 players.
So I did tell the story on the podcast before, but we had a promo night for the Fresno Grizzlies where the fans would vote for which player they wanted to have a jersey night of.
Right.
And my roommate Gino, everybody had to like do their own little promo, like, why would you vote for me? And my roommate Gino says, if you vote for me, I'll sign every single shirt. And then long story short, he cheated, created a macro on his computer to vote for himself and won by like 11 billion votes. And then, we made him sign every single shirt in like a day as his punishment. Took him like 8 hours of signing.
Breaking news 3 days ago now. The Dallas Cowboys will be on Hard Knocks this year.
Oh, how about that? Is that going to be good? So we got McCarthy, we got Dak coming back, all the receivers, Dan Quinn on defense.
It feels like, when was the last time they were on it? It wasn't that long ago, right?
I feel like Hard Knocks is a tough show to keep fresh every year.
Well, particularly now when it's being
stuff.
Yeah, particularly now when it's being very sanitized. Like it's being kept away from the things that are actually interesting. That like where it really ran off the rails is like the Raiders run Hard Knocks and Antonio Brown is going through one of the most dramatic, absurd sagas in NFL history between like freezing his feet off, refusing to play in a helmet that wasn't the one he wanted, spray painting his own helmet so they thought it was like, it's ridiculous. Barely mentioned on Hard Knocks, right? While they're focusing on whatever ridiculous stuff is going on. Like if there isn't a camera crew on Antonio Brown 24/7 and that's the show, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
So like anything,
I agree.
Anything could happen for Dallas, and we might not even see it.
I thought the early years were interesting because it was like the first time, because everybody's got to do, you do the cut days, you do the couple guys trying to make the team, you do the difficult conversations, you see the Turk and all that stuff. But like that's been played out for 20 years now. It's almost 20 years of Hard Knocks, right? That they've had. And it's like the same storylines over and over. So you kind of need like the weird stuff to keep it fresh. Or Rex Ryan.
Which isn't, I get why they do it, because they're trying to build this like image and brand and all this kind of stuff, but that stuff doesn't hurt the brand. It's drama. Like it helps.
The football dork in me though loves the installation of the offense and X's and O's and
both of it. It's not like it disappears.
No,
my point is like
I just don't think that's appealing enough for everybody.
I don't subscribe to the idea that all publicity is good publicity, and there's no such thing as bad press. But that isn't bad press if you're the NFL. It might not be something that you would choose as the thing to put front and center. But Antonio, like a multiple episodes in a Hard Knocks dedicated to Antonio Brown being crazy is not harming your product. In fact, it's getting a ton of people to watch that show, and it helps everybody. It's raising all tides.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think you should sanitize that. I don't think it's helping you.
All right, man. Good show. We'll get some votes going.
Yeah.
When I come back, I'm going to be doesn't matter. Later in the summer, we're going to be having you dress up like minor league Steve.
Yes.
We'll get to the next.
When is a rough date on that so people have an idea?
First week of August, safely. I think we should get it set up for. I'll be home. I'll be back around before that, but I think first week of August would be a good time to do it. We'll figure out what we have to figure out a good topic for that show too. That just makes sense.
Yeah.
Overall, season. We'll do like our predictions or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll wait till late. Maybe we wait till late August and do like our preseason predictions.
Really maximize the FaceTime with the absurd face hair and
we want to make sure
afro wig and all those kinds of things.
But yeah, I got to go pick up some gear. And by the way, get to PFF.com. The PFF College Football Preview Magazine is ridiculous. 600 plus pages of analysis on every single team, advanced scheme breakdowns, key players, what they lost, what's coming back. It's better than the Phil Steele magazine, which I love. Wow. I absolutely love Phil Steele. I love the hard copy of having Phil Steele. But I've pivoted to PFF for my college football preview magazine needs because this is so good. So go check it out over at PFF.com.
Remember, Andrew Whitworth is coming up right now, in fact.
Oh, then we're going to sell that too. I don't like to lead our listeners astray. So
no, we've made sure he's coming this time.
Okay, so we've already got that going. All right, so here's Sam's discussion with Andrew Whitworth.
Okay, welcome into Andrew Whitworth, one of the highest graded players in PFF history, a longtime NFL star on the offensive line. Andrew, thanks so much for doing this.
Hey, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be on.
One of the first things I want to ask you is, we're in this world now where athletes are kind of pushing their careers, longer and longer. Obviously, Tom Brady is the most obvious example. Brady's going to play till he's 55 years old on the TB12 method with the water and the avocados, but there's no way that's what's sustaining a big offensive lineman like you. How are you still going at your age? Tell me it's, barbecue or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm from the South, so it's a lot of sweet tea and, smothered steak and stuff like that. But
now we're talking.
No, it's exactly. No, but, it's one of those things I think that so much has been learned over the last, decade really about nutrition and health and how to take care of yourself and maybe some of the best ways to get things done. And from an athletic standpoint and from a longevity standpoint. I think that I'm benefiting from that. Tom is too, just some of the research. And then also the game has changed a lot. And so I think that that's benefiting guys being able to play a little longer than maybe in years past or really what we've seen over the last couple of decades.
How different is what you're doing now in terms of recovery and all that kind of stuff compared to, even when you first came into the NFL?
I would say way different. I mean, I'll never forget, really when I came here to Los Angeles to play for the Rams, going into year 12, I went into Jay Glazer's gym, Unbreakable, in West Hollywood, and he's like showing me around the gym. And he's like, the workout room and the mats and all this stuff, and all of a sudden he shows me this room. He's like, this is our recovery room. And I was like, it's like, what the crap's a recovery room? And he's like, come on, man, you played in the league for 11 years. recovery room. I was like, I have no idea what you mean. So we go in there and he starts showing me around the Normatec boots and all the kind of calming music, and it's dark and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, all right. And so he tells me to try it out. I'm like, okay, that actually, I feel pretty good now after the working out and doing the recovery stuff. And so I kind of got into studying a lot of the recovery methods and those kind of things. And so it's way different than it was when I got in the league. I mean, you didn't step foot in the training room unless you wanted to be mocked or unless you wanted them to look at you the wrong way when I first started playing. And now, I mean, I think the training room is almost, it's the place to hang out and get your body right and get to feeling good. And I think it's changed. The whole MO of what a training room is for has completely changed over the last 15 years.
So you were 12 years deep into this thing before you even started to seriously investigate, whatever the cutting edge of recovery and that kind of stuff is.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was I kind of understood. I at least understood the push and pull, and I think for me it's always been that. It's about, especially as a big guy, and it's really probably not any different from Tom, even being a quarterback, in the sense of his arm. Probably the way he trains his arm is that. For me, I started realizing like there's days that I need to go and I'm going to go full speed, but then I also know that means maybe the next day it's going to be either completely off or more of a day where I'm just getting my body back, and so these days that you used to have in training camp where you're going, 15 days in a row of putting pads on or full pads or 2 days or whatever it is, you start realizing like that's really what's actually putting wear and tear on my body. It's not playing an NFL football game. It's like my only goal every year is to try and make it through August, and then I can play in the football games. And it's like that doesn't seem like that's the right mentality, And so I always relate it to this. It's like if you look at physics and stuff, it's like, that would be the equivalent of telling like heavyweight boxers to fight every day against each other instead of just once, and then they go into a 6-month training session to get ready for the next one. And so it's like learning that, hey, you know what, you don't have to do it every day. You might have to do a form of it, but the actual contact doesn't have to happen all the time.
I would say that most of the smartest players I've spoken to in the NFL are offensive linemen. And I've heard other people say this as well, that like if you want really intelligent answers, the people you talk to in the locker room are offensive linemen. Have I just been wildly fortunate with the people that I've spoken to, or is there something about the offensive line that either draws people that are intelligent to it or somehow like rewards intelligence, in terms of staying power or being a better player?
Yeah, I think it definitely rewards it. I mean, and I also think that in general, to play offensive line, you've got to have a certain level of intelligence. I mean, especially guys that are either playing on the edges or playing, right in the dead middle as the center. I mean, you really kind of have to understand a lot of different things, because who you're blocking and who you could have on every given play can change really depending on the defense, the scheme, the personnel in the game. You have to understand so many other things. I'll never forget years back having an argument with one of our D linemen in Cincinnati. We were talking about night for a game, just hanging out, talking about football. And, he's just telling me like you linemen, like all y'all got to do is block people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, well, let me ask you a question. I got to think about on every given play what the personnel is, who's down, who's a rusher, who's not a rusher. All of a sudden that changes, a nickel or somebody rotates down. All of a sudden we're flipping which way we're sliding, which way we're going. And the play can literally be snapped, and it's all of a sudden changed from who I was blocking 5 seconds ago to now. I was like, what are you thinking about on 3rd and 11? Would you put your hand on the ground as a defensive end? And he's like, there's all kinds of things I'm thinking about. And I was like, that's exactly why you're not any good. So the only thing that you should be thinking about is rushing the quarterback. And that's it, right? So when you're figuring out how to beat the guy in front of you and how you get to the quarterback fast as possible. And that is the absolute only thing you should be thinking about on that down. And so it's just that our position is just it's a position where, there's so much that goes into it to understanding the playbook, understanding the plays, the audibles, and also who you could be blocking could be changing throughout a play and throughout a motion, especially in Sean McVay's offense where we're doing so much motioning before the snap that a lot of things are changing.
I played at a football at an amateur level in Ireland, and I played with a guy who was 2 years deep on the defensive line and didn't know what a down was. Like that's the level of thought processing that's involved in playing in the defensive line in Ireland. Anyway, I'm sure there's a little bit more to it at the NFL level, but I'm interested in McVay's offense because Sean McVay got this job and was hailed as this, next young genius, the youngest head coach of all time at the time. The offense took the league by storm, and then it's kind of taken slight steps backwards, and there's been this evolution process. How has that offense moved on since you've been there? Like what have the extra steps forward been to try and keep ahead of defenses?
Yeah, I think you really look at the last couple of years. I don't know, if slowing down is the word that I look for when I try to describe it, as much as I don't think we've been as successful in the red zone and maybe in scoring opportunities as we were the first couple of years. I mean, we've seemed to move the ball well on people. We've seemed to have good drives. And then for whatever reason, we haven't probably really put it in the way we did. I mean, you look at the streak we had there with Todd Gurley in 17 and 18 of just – when we got down in there, it was almost a given that we were going to run the football in the end zone at some point. And, it was pretty impressive of the job he was able to do and we were able to kind of really do. And Sean was able to put us in positions. And I think that right now we haven't executed as well down there as we would have liked. And I think that that's one of those things that obviously over time, I don't care if you're a great defense, a great offense, whatever it is, people kind of understand how you tick and they're going to have a plan to stop it. And I think that the way we have to continue to evolve is like we got to understand that there's going to be people that understand exactly what our offense is trying to accomplish. And so the job's only going to get harder as the years go on. And then also us being able to do other things and add wrinkles and convert, in different ways in situations where maybe you aren't always ahead of the chains. Maybe you aren't always in the best position possible, but you find a way to score and you find a way to put the ball in the end zone. And I think that's one of the things that this offense has got to continue to grow into. Now, we've also changed a lot of pieces year in, year out that I think this year is one of those years that could be a great opportunity for us having a lot of guys back to really take a big step offensively.
And Matthew Stafford presumably is a big part of that. Like, what does he bring to the table that Jared Goff didn't in terms of being able to overcome some of those hurdles?
I don't know if it's necessarily something he brings to the table that's different as much as, like I've said it continuously. I mean, there's really no replacement for experience and the wisdom of playing this game as long as somebody like Matthew has played. I know, firsthand what I understood in my 5th or 6th year in the league about offense, about playing the game, about how fast things came to me at the line of scrimmage, really understood exactly what every little play and intricacy was of every play. What I understood at year 5 and year 6 compared to year 11, year 12, year 13, it's not even close. I mean, I can remember literally like sitting around at year 11, 12, 13, trying to think like, man, I'm trying to remember why I used to have a lot of stress when we used to call this play, or why this certain defense used to give me trouble, because now it just seems so simple. And so I just think it's one of those things that not only does Stafford obviously bring the talent of a top pick and the great player he's been, but really that understanding of that next level thinking that he kind of has seen everything, and it's kind of everything that has happened in his career. He's played in a lot of different offenses. He's played against a lot of different defenses. And I think things just come faster and more natural when you have that experience and time under your belt.
One of the things that players always get asked is, who's the toughest guy you've gone up against and all those kinds of things. And it's a terrible question. It's usually just the thing that everyone gets asked. But we had Joe Thomas on here, and he gave one of the most interesting answers I've ever heard to that, because he was such a hardcore film junkie that he always felt fine, right? He knew exactly what the guy was going to do, and he'd had it prepped and down all week long. And the guy that gave him the most trouble ever was some random from a preseason game, because they never got the scouting film on him and he just didn't know what he was going to do. So some dude that was buried on the depth chart, barely making teams, gave Hall of Famer Joe Thomas the most trouble he ever had in his career. So I'm curious, what's your answer? Like, who's the guy that you struggle the most against?
I would say probably there's a couple guys out there that, when you were young and a rookie in the league, that you're like, man, this dude's really special, and just learning the intricacies of how they rush. I mean, I think that, you all have games where it's like, all right, maybe it wasn't the best game you ever had. It's not necessarily that you struggle against a certain guy. You probably just took some bad sets or got in some bad body positions. And I think it's one of those things that no matter who you are, if you're Joe Thomas, if you're, Anthony Munoz, whoever it is over the time of the greatest tackles to play this game, you can go find tape where there's games they've struggled. And I think for me, probably the two that I could really think of that I thought were just good, I don't know if they call it struggle as much as they were great players, is, Dwight Freeney was really special when I got in the league. He was a really good rusher. Now, he also had 4 touchdown leads, and you're playing basically third down offense against the Indianapolis Colts at that time. So him and Mathis just got the tee off all day. But Dwight Freeney was a really good rusher. I always thought Elvis Dumerville was really good in his heyday. I mean, he didn't play every down, but he was good, really good guy on third down. He was a tough rusher. And then obviously a guy that doesn't get talked as much about, but I thought was really special. And I know Joe and I both had different games where he kind of got a little bit the best of us at times, was John Abraham. He was a guy that man, he had some talent and ability. Now, he didn't stay as healthy at times when we both got in the league, but when he was healthy, man, he was a really good rusher.
He's still the best pass rusher the Jets have had in like the last 20 years. John Abraham was fantastic.
Man, he could do it. He could go back then.
Guys like Elvis Dumerville, how much do players that are just a different size and shape to everybody, like do those guys automatically have a slight edge because you're just not used to blocking somebody built like that?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I think it's one of those guys, like you look at James Harrison. I can remember when I would watch tape of guys like, say, get to the playoffs or whatever, and you're sitting at home, you're watching a game, you're getting ready to watch it, and you're thinking about these young tackles he might face or whatever. And I used to always say, like, man, this guy, he's going to have a rough day, not because of whether or not he's a great player or going to be a really good left tackle, but because he's just never blocked somebody like James before. And it's so weird. It's just different. Like that, you kind of have to learn that your leverage has to be a little different than it normally is. And some of the moves he's going to use off coming from really underneath you rather than a guy who's kind of even with you height wise. It's gonna hit you a complete different way, and you're gonna have to respond with your feet and your hands in a way that you've never really had to unless you felt somebody like that before. And so it's just the first couple of times you play those guys, you realize that it's going to take a little bit of a different technique to block them than maybe somebody else that you're used to that's a little lengthier and long and plays really with that range. Somebody who likes to get in close to you. I think it's a lot, again, like a fighting, almost like boxing, right? It's a guy who really is going to rush from really inside the frame and not necessarily long arming you and doing things like that. And you're going to have to get used to that throughout the game and get a feel for it.
Offensive line coaches, I think everyone kind of recognizes the effect that those guys can have. And, a guy like Dante Scarnecchia in New England for years always had this obvious impact on the offensive line. What I'm curious about is that kind of impact that they have, is that a permanent thing for the offensive lineman in that system, or is it like a transient effect that's only there while the line coach is there? So if Scarnecchia leaves, is everybody that he's been dealing with better in perpetuity going forward, or do they need like the constant whatever it is he's doing in the week in practice and in the film room and picking up the little mistakes and correcting things constantly? Do they need that guy around to sort of keep the benefit of his coaching?
Well, I think it's really more that what's pretty wild, is that over my time that I've been around the league and been to different clinics and everything else, is you just be amazed how different everything is taught from a technique standpoint, from a mindset standpoint. It's like every different offensive line coach, it's like you could have 5 guys that you could tell me, hey, I think these 5 O-line coaches are 5 of the best in the game. And we could sit around at a round table and all 5 of them are going to say that one of the things that the other guy teaches is like forbidden. Like you never block like that for me ever. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, how can this guy be this good? This guy be this good, and you two think that both of you techniques are like you can't even do them, like it's not allowed. No, that's in NFL football. You should never do that technique. And it's like, wait a minute, how's that possible? But that's how it is. It really is true that it's so different every team. So it'd be more so not only does Scarnecchia leave, but who's the next guy, and do they teach the exact same techniques and the exact same things? Because every different offensive line coach may literally tell you that whatever it is that you're doing is like the worst thing ever, even though it's been working for you. And here's the new way I want you to do it. And so there is an element to, is this the best way for this player to block or not? And that really can be where it's a key.
With your kind of tenure, do you get like a level of credit in the bank where if somebody comes in and says, look, you can't do this technique anymore, you get to say, look, I've been in here working at this level for a decade plus. I'm not reworking things from the ground up because that's not how we do it here.
Well, I think I just put on my, I got 10 and 9-year-old boys. I put on my 10 and 9-year-old boy ears. I kind of hear what I want to hear and not the rest. And so, no, I think you don't get messed with that much. I mean, if some guy ever came in and asked me with my hips and just the things I've had to endure over time and injury-wise and everything, if they ever asked me to come in and do the Joe Thomas glide, I would have absolutely no shot of blocking anybody. So there's certain things that guys just aren't going to do. I know Joe and I've heard him say this before, and And I think for Joe Thomas, it's like he has his style, right? And then there's other guys that have their style. And for Joe, I've heard him say, like, I'll never block people the way Whitworth does. Like, we're just different. And that's the truth. Like, I would never be able to glide and probably do the sets that somebody like Joe Thomas would do. So if a coach ever wanted me to do that, it's just not something that is in my repertoire, at the time. And so I think it's one of those things that every guy's different. And that's where I really get into, like I was saying about all the different O-line coaches, is that it's tough to tell me that everybody's got a way they have to block. Because if you go to all 32 teams, and you guys see it if anybody does, all 32 left tackles set completely different. They use their hands completely different. They move their bodies different. They kick different. They post different. I mean, everybody's got their own way, and it's about fine-tuning each player to be the best they can be, and the way that they move and the way that they get their job done.
Right. I mean, some of the best ever. Remember, Randall McDaniel with that absurd, weird bent leg stance thing that nobody in the world can even replicate, let alone play at an all-pro level like that. If it works, it works. Like, let the guy do what he's doing.
Yep.
When you came into the NFL, you were drafted as a guard, right? Now, was that because the Bengals already had Levi Jones and Willie Anderson, or was that you getting that thing of, this guy doesn't have the quicks or the footwork to play on the outside, we're going to have to move him in to guard, and that's where it'll be great?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of teams going through the process that was kind of the thing. Like, we don't think you'll be able to play tackle. And because it was just based off of, a lot of that stuff is based off of the ability to really, like, do a drill where they're telling you go, and they're timing how fast you can move, and they're, how fast can you run a 40, how far can you jump. But it really doesn't have anything to do with, when I'm playing a game and I'm using my eyes and my body, am I able to speed up and slow down at certain speeds to block the guy that I'm having to block? And that's where you can get a little off on offensive linemen when you're only looking at those numbers, is that the actual art of blocking is like the art of fighting, in the sense that there's just a natural way you understand the opponent and what you need to do and the leverage you need to get in. It really doesn't have anything to do with the intangibles of point A to point B and how fast you can get there. And, you look at, like, I would say some of the worst pass blockers I really have studied over the years were probably some of the quickest dudes. Like, they were so fast at getting to spots, but they almost were too fast, and they would get them in bad positions and those kind of things. And so I think that's one of the things when I was coming in, it was like, we don't know if he has the actual metrics of speed and all this to be a tackle, but what we definitely think for strength and leverage and all those type of things, he can play guard. And since he kind of drafted me as both, because they had just signed Levi Jones to a contract and Willie to an extension, and they didn't know what Eric Steinbach was going to do in free agency the next year. And so I actually repped at tackle all training camp and a little bit of guard. And then obviously, the rest is history. Levi Jones got injured early in the season, and I played tackle there for my first season.
This might sound like a stupid question, but at your age, what are you working on over the course of a year? Like, young tackles might be adjusting their vertical set or working on their first step on outside zone. Like, what are you tweaking? What are you fine tuning? Or is it all just, maintenance and making sure the body stays healthy and, you're not falling apart?
For the most part, it's maintenance stuff and taking care of the body. Obviously, our position is so demanding from a physical standpoint that really getting healthy, getting the body, moving the way you want it to, and feeling good about how you're moving and how you're feeling. Because you've really gotten enough time under tension, I would say, of 10,000 something, I've got to be somewhere around 15,000 snaps at this point. It's like, you've kind of done all that and you have a feel for that. And it's like, as long as you do maintain the ability to move, your strength, and feeling good, you've kind of got all the other reps already under your belt. And so it's always going to be more about turning the engine back on and just kind of getting moving out there and just trusting what you feel and what you've done for so long.
You want to know the number? We've got your whole career. You're one of the first guys that has year one in the PFF system. So, including the playoffs, total career snaps, 15,084.
15,084. Wow. That's
we're including we include penalty snaps, right? If you run the whole play and it gets called back, it counted. You were out there doing it. So that's a snap. You're getting credit for those.
I like it. 15,000 plus.
Pretty good going, right?
A lot of football.
It is a lot of football. How much?
You let me. You either got to go for 20,000 or you got to stop, because 16 doesn't sound
Right.
as cool, right?
It's a nice
like
round
you hit
number.
15.
You've either got to go full Jerry Rice or pack it in now.
Oh man, I'm not going to tell the wife that. She'll get frustrated.
How much longer have you got to go? You're gonna keep on. You're gonna move on to the avocado ice cream and the TB12 and push it deep into the 40s.
I may have to jump on the TB12 method if I want to keep rolling, but no, we'll see. I mean, like I said, every year I've approached them like they're my last for quite some time now, just because I think that's the best way to do it. Really body-wise, mentality. And if the year goes great and I feel great and I play well and it's at the level that I want to play, then I'll, then every January, February, March, I kind of sit around and say, all right, you know what, do I want to do it again? And so I think that's kind of the same approach I have this year, is to come into it like it's my last. And if it goes really well and I feel like I can still play at the level I expect, we'll see from there. But eventually, like everybody else is probably wondering, I'm assuming that the are going to go off the track at some point. So I'm always optimistic, but I try to keep it real with myself.
Well, when it does, we'll start the Andrew Whitworth Hall of Fame campaign wagon moving. We've been pushing your career for the entirety of it. You've been one of the best graded players in PFF's history. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and talking to us.
Hey, I appreciate it so much. I always appreciate what you guys have added to the game, and it's a great way, especially for offensive linemen, to add a metric that gives us some value to football teams, and not just the opportunity for people to yell at me when I go to the supermarket for holding somebody. So they actually get to see a number that tells them something about how you play and how you do things. So I think it's a great add to the game of football.
Appreciate it, sir. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank y'all.
That was fun, huh? With Whit?
Yeah, it was good. Like Andrew Whitworth, I spoke to him years ago for something. I don't even remember what it was, but I interviewed him a long time ago. So I already knew he was like a smart, intelligent guy. And yeah, he gave some good answers. He artfully sidestepped me trying to get him to say something controversial about Stafford and Goff. I don't know how,
Artfully.
Yeah, I don't know how, good interviewers get people to make those statements. Like, there's got to be a way. Like, there's got to be some sort of technique to making them drop something really, really out
say,
there.
like, Matthew Stafford's way better than Jared Goff, right?
I mean, I tried. I think he wasn't buying.
Second best left tackle we've ever had on the show?
Probably, yes. Honestly, second best left tackle of his era, which makes him one of the greatest of all time. Like,
would you put him second best behind Joe Thomas?
Yeah, over his career? I mean, who else would be in the discussion? Jason Peters, guys like David Bakhtiari are pushing in that direction over his career. But
well, the thing about Witt is he's played two eras, essentially. He's played that, early half, because the lifespan of the left tackle is like 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, not anymore.
No, I know. Well, he's expanding it. So anyway, it's great. Smart, really smart player. Those offensive linemen, man, they are the best when it comes to just football analysis and general discussion, because they have to know so much. So good stuff. Good interview. Glad we could actually do it. Bobby Wagner is going to be coming up at some point, I promise.
Yes.
It's happening. Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in on our Monday edition. We'll be back here on Thursday talking more NFL action.